What's up, guys? My name is Isaac Poteet, and I'm the host of Tales from the Tailboard Podcast. This is a podcast for first responders of every kind, from those defending our nation overseas to those serving at home in dispatch, law enforcement, fire, EMS, and the hospital staff we hand patients off to every single day. This isn't a highlight reel podcast. It's a place for real conversations about the job, the mindset, and the things we don't always talk about, especially the stuff that follows us home. Today's episode is a solo one. I have no guest to validate it, no dramatic story for shock value, and just an honest breakdown of something my brain did that made me stop and ask, why does this happen and is it normal? If you ever laid in bed and felt like your brain wouldn't fully shut off, this one's probably for you. Let's get into it.
Warning. The opinions expressed in this content are those of the host and its guests.
Services allow that.
Doing paramedic AF.
Every car with a ballistic shield.
Things the fire service can't stand.
Here, same day, created a new account. Got
fast here. Like they're amazing.
So I want to talk about something that happened last night that sounds small, almost stupid. But the longer I sat with it, the more I realized how many people will probably experience this and never say it out loud. I was laying in bed trying to fall asleep, as, anybody usually does at the end of the day. And I finally got into what I thought was a really comfortable position. Maybe the most comfortable position possible, at least for me. You know that moment where your body just settles in and you think, yeah, that's it. And then my brain did something strange. I thought, if someone asked me what my most comfortable sleeping position is, I'd probably get on the ground and show them what it looked like. And then immediately after that, I thought, well, if they asked me, hey, what's that called? I'd have to explain it. So I explained it in my head. I described it like I was talking to someone else in my head. How it's kind of like the fetal position, but not fully curled, like a modified fetal position, comfortable, familiar. And then I realized something that stopped me cold. I didn't just think that thought. I had already planned an explanation to that thought before anyone ever asked. And the weird part wasn't the thought itself. The weird part was noticing I had pre-thought the entire interaction. And that's when my brain went, okay, why did you just do that? I want to be very clear here. This wasn't anxiety. I wasn't scared. I wasn't confused. I wasn't disassociating. I knew exactly where I was. I knew exactly what I was doing. I was just very aware of my own thinking. And if you're anything like me, the second you notice something like that, your brain doesn't go, huh, interesting. It goes, what is that called, and is it bad? That's the moment this stopped being about sleep, because I know a lot of first responders, caregivers, parents, and high-stress people have these moments and immediately assume something is wrong with them. So today I want to walk through this slowly, not to diagnose it, not to dramatize it, just to understand it, maybe just a little better. My first instinct was labels: anxiety, intrusive thoughts, disassociation, even maybe the spectrum. I mean, was there something wrong with me that I just wasn't aware of? I mean, other than the names I get called every single day, or, just being too talkative or whatever the case may be. But, I'm used to being called names, but this is the point where, I looked at myself and I said, is there something wrong with me? Questioning those things doesn't mean you're unstable. It just means that you're trying to orient yourself. But here's the key difference that matters. I wasn't out of control. I wasn't overwhelmed. I wasn't distressed. I was observing my own thoughts. That distinction is everything, because awareness can feel uncomfortable if you're not used to sitting with it. And uncomfortable does not automatically mean unhealthy. There's a name for this. And I just said it. It's called metacognition. Simply put, it means thinking about your own thinking. Now, I want to cite Flavel J.H. in 1979, Metacognition and Cognitive Monitoring in the American Psychologist. This isn't new. Philosophers are writing about this centuries ago. René Descartes famously said, "I think, therefore I am," which is essentially awareness of awareness. In modern psychology, metacognition is considered a high-level executive function. It's how we plan, how we self-correct, how we learn from mistakes, and how we anticipate future interactions. What makes it feel strange isn't the process. It's noticing it happened in real time without a task attached to it. Now, there's another concept here at play, and it's called mental rehearsal. Athletes do it, surgeons do it, pilots do it, and first responders absolutely do it. Another citation I'll overlay here is Klein G. in 1998 in Sources of Power, How People Make Decisions. He said, "Mental rehearsal is how people in high-stakes environments prepare without realizing they're preparing. You run conversations, you anticipate questions, you explain things before you're asked, because being caught off guard has consequences. That system doesn't just turn off because you went to bed." Now, a lot of people hear this story and immediately think intrusive thoughts, and that's why I want to hear this distinction from Cameron, the mental health medic on TikTok. He said this, and I'm going to insert a clip.
Let's talk about thoughts for a minute. What's the difference between an unwanted and an intrusive thought? I like to give the analogy or equate these two visitors. Everybody wants Girl Scouts to come knock on their door and offer to sell them cookies, financially bankrupt them in some cases. But then you have door-to-door salesmen that maybe are trying to sell you windows or whatever, and you don't really want them there, but you kind of entertain them. Hear what they have to say, and then go, yeah, thanks, no thanks. And then you have intrusive visitors that may be burglars, home invaders, things like that. With thoughts, we have unwanted thoughts that are maybe anxious, or I'm scared of something, or I'm sad about something, and I don't necessarily want to feel that way. So I try to compartmentalize that. Whereas intrusive thoughts are actually distressing, right? I have a thought that is not inherent to my nature. It goes against my moral compass. It maybe contains themes of like violence or self-harm, harm of others. Sexual nature goes against my religious or moral compass, moral code. And those can be actual physically distressing, and then we start to think, is there something wrong with me? From a house standpoint, right? Is there something wrong with my security system? Is there something wrong with my door locks? What did I do? Whereas with any of those, we didn't necessarily do anything. And the clinical side of it is, if it causes you distress that you had these thoughts and you're actually focused on, am I a bad person for having this thought, versus that's irritating and I would just, it's 3:00 in the morning and I would like to go back to sleep and stop thinking about my day tomorrow or whatever, which would be more of an irritating thought or an annoying thought, not necessarily an intrusive thought. So there you go. Hopefully that helps distinguish the types of thoughts.
Now, that difference matters. Intrusive thoughts crash in. What I experienced was observation. First responder context says that if you work in fire, EMS, law enforcement, and healthcare, this makes even more sense. We explain ourselves constantly, on scene, in reports, in court, in after-action reviews. Our brains learn to anticipate questions before they're asked. That's not paranoia, that's survival. Now, another person I want to bring in, they're not a guest, but they had an opportunity to make a video, and they did fabulous at this. You may have recognized an interview I did with Dennis Carradine Jr., as well as, the previous clip where I did an interview with Cameron, the mental health medic. Both of these people had agreed to come on and do a short clip. Now, they made their own post and posted it to their own TikToks. They just allowed me to pull them, and I'd like to introduce this clip here where Dennis talks about trauma and hypervigilance. And this is where trauma comes in, not as a diagnosis, but as context. Dennis Carradine works with this every day, and I want you to listen how he explains why this shows up at night. I'll insert a clip right here for you guys.
Quick question for my first responders and healthcare folks. Why is it that the second your head hits the pillow, your brain goes, cool, now let's replay every call, every patient, every decision, and that one weird thing someone said in 2014? Here's the psychology of it. Your brain is not broken. It's hyper-trained. When you work in emergency services or healthcare, your nervous system is literally conditioned to stay on high alert. You don't have the luxury of winding down. Your brain has trained to scan, assess, predict, and prevent catastrophe. So when the world finally gets quiet, your brain panics because silence feels unsafe. There's no radio, no alarms, no vitals, no screaming, and your mind goes, wait, why is nobody dying right now? That's not anxiety, that's actually survival wiring. Add in shift work, sleep deprivation, adrenaline dumps, moral injury, unfinished emotional business, and the fact that nobody ever taught you how to decompress after seeing human suffering. And congratulations, your brain becomes a 24-hour trauma podcast you never subscribed to. You're not overthinking, you're overactivated. Your body doesn't know you're off duty because in this line of work, being off has never meant being safe. So if you're lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying scenes, questioning decisions, or planning conversations that will never ever happen, you're not weak, you're not broken, you're conditioned. The problem isn't that your brain won't shut off, it's that nobody ever showed you how to tell your nervous system, stand down, we survived today. And until you retrain that system, sleep will always feel like another shift you're failing at. Look, stay tuned for part 2 where I bring it all home for you.
And as noted, you should know that that's not weakness, that's adaptation. Here's what I want people to hear. Not every strange mental experience needs a label. Awareness isn't pathology, and noticing your thoughts doesn't mean you're losing control. Sometimes your brain is just doing what it was trained to do without a call attached to it, and understanding that can take the fear out of it. If you ever laid in bed and thought, why does my brain do this? You're not alone. And you're probably not broken, you're just trained. And sometimes understanding is enough. Before we keep rolling, I want to give a quick shout out to IndusShift Apparel, their first responder owned brand that actually understands the culture, the long nights, the dark humor, and the pride that comes with the job. If you want gear that represents the fire and EMS mindset without being corny, check them out. You can find the link through my channels, and every purchase helps support creators and conversations just like this one. All right, let's get back to the episode. Thanks, guys, for your support. Now, I wanted to save the sponsor read to the end of this video because this is going to be a short episode. It's a solo episode, but I still want to give credit to my sponsor because he likes and reposts and shares every one of my videos, and he's just an all-around solid dude. And with that, let's come to a closing. If this episode resonated with you, or you caught yourself thinking, yeah, I've done that, you're not alone, and more importantly, you're not broken. My goal with this podcast was never to diagnose or label anyone. It is to create a space to understand what the job does to us, and how we can make sense of it without fear. If you found value in this episode, I'd really appreciate it if you took a second to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment. Even just letting me know you've watched it helps more than you realize. This episode will be broken down into short clips throughout the week, and if you're seeing these pop up, that's where they're coming from. And as always, if you're not safe, I'll see you soon. Dispatch, medic 1, show medic 1 en route.